Chronometry calibrated. The gateway will open in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Analyzing data. Likelihood of parallel universes now at 9%. Continuing analysis of the many worlds hypothesis.
They're so proud of themselves. They don't even care. They're so fat and satisfied, they can't imagine it. That someone like me would ever get inside their house, walk their floors, spit in their food, review their media. Welcome, everyone. I'm Gayfish. And for the last 8 episodes, we have been reviewing the MCU, but that's done now. The MCU is over, guys. And it's true. It's over. Joining me for the next season of our podcast is, as you heard her, the lovely DemonMama.
Hello, hello, hello.
And Moss.
Howdy.
And again, so we're going to be getting into the first season of Star Wars Andor, because season 2 is coming out in April, I want to say, late April. And I figured we'll get this one done so that by the time season 2 is out, we'll have some other stuff and then we can get season 2. Now, Moss, have you seen Rogue One?
I don't remember it at all. I know that I've seen it. I don't remember it at all.
Okay. So we might throw Rogue One in after Andor season 2 or something like that.
That'd be a really good idea.
My partner wants to watch it anyway, so that's a good timing. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay.
I like Rogue One. It's solid. Yeah.
Before we get into Andor, though, I do have to make one brief foray back into the MCU because, as we all know, we were talking about Captain America's arc in the MCU, and right after we recorded Endgame, I went and saw Captain America 4, and guys, it's not good. it's not good at all.
Really? Please.
It's I haven't looked into all of the behind the scenes stuff, but I understand they did like multiple rounds of reshoots, and what you get is just like this. Have you seen those articles where Netflix was like telling writers to write their shows for dumber audiences, where everyone is just describing the things that are happening so that people can watch it without looking at the screen?
The second screen experience, which I am at war with. I am at war with the second screen experience.
This movie has a second screen experience.
That's terrible.
Literally, instead of actually showing people's motivations and like have them act on it, they have newsreaders explain their motivations to the audience.
Wow.
It's not even a sequel to like the other Captain America movies. Obviously, Sam Wilson, new Captain America, Steve's story is done. But even so, like, it's a sequel to The Incredible Hulk from 2008. The villain is literally the villain they set up in The Incredible Hulk, the leader, Sam Stearns, because you saw him in The Incredible Hulk getting like, blood leaking into his an open wound in his forehead, and it's Hulk blood.
Oh,
so
that guy. Okay,
that guy is the villain in this one. And like President Ross, he's Thunderbolt Ross. Obviously, they recast because William Hurt died, but like, so he's like a big character. Liv Tyler comes back. She was in The Incredible Hulk. So it's an Incredible Hulk sequel.
Wow.
But also like, I don't know. It's a mess. I'm not going to get too much into it because that's not why we're here. I just wanted to give you an update that we don't need to review that one.
Well, tied into that, last night I have a bit of a funny anecdote, which was we were starting to watch Andor, and I have a very good friend over who's wonderful. And as we sat down, they were like, "Oh, I'm going to play Dig a Hole on my Steam Deck while we watch this." I was like, "No, you don't, you second screen experience Andor." And they were like, "I'm sorry, I won't." And then they were like, "Oh man, I'm glad I didn't second screen experience the show." I'm like, "No, you don't want to do that. This show is like not going to hold your hand in that way."
Well, since we are already getting into talking about how much people like this show, Moss, you are the newbie to Andor. So what are your first thoughts on these first 3 episodes?
I had absolutely no idea what to expect going in. I was like, okay, it's a Star Wars. Like, I think that this is doing what I have been wanting from cinema, which is like, it's telling a new kind of story. Because that's the thing that it's like, I'm tired of another Captain America. I'm tired of another Disney live action remake. I'm tired of this. I'm like, let's tell some new stories. And it seems to me as though Andor is like, we want to tell a different story, like just about a guy And we just need to put like the name of something on it to make it catch a broader audience. Like that's kind of the impression that I get from this show. And like maybe it'll do more stuff later to tie it into the broader Star Wars universe. But like, we're just talking about the first 3 episodes today. That's all I've seen. I'm not gonna continue watching until our next episode, even though it was good enough that I'm like, I want to keep watching it because it's just like some guy. And I think the only thing that really makes it feel Star Warsy to me is that there's like droids and the constant ever present question of droid rights that lingers in my mind when I'm watching a Star Wars. Yeah, so good overall. I feel like I'm looking forward to some more fleshing out of Cass's character, the main character. Just I'm like, he's got these like sentiments and they're trying to tie him back to his childhood of like, oh, he's always had this kind of rebellious personality, but it just sometimes feels like he's just some guy and then he says something that's really based. And I'm like, I want more character development for him as we go forward.
Well, I think you're going to get that.
Yeah.
You're definitely going to get that.
It's called his name. So I'm guessing we're going to get more of the guy who's the main character.
Like he's in, Rogue One, and this show is a prequel to Rogue One focused on his character. So yes, I think it's safe to say he's going to be in more episodes of the show that has his name. Sure. Your thing about droid rights, I had a thought watching this, and I'm not going to get too much into what this show does. I'll address it later. But the way that B is treated in terms of like how Marva and Cassian interact with him, where they treat him like a person.
Yeah, always.
It makes me think of possibly the most offensive episode of The Mandalorian I have ever seen. And it was an episode that was widely hated by the fandom menace types because it was the episode that had Jack Black and Lizzo in it, which
I haven't seen The Mandalorian. That's hilarious.
This episode was about, it was like this city that was like this utopia for humans, where like all of the humans were living like 17th century French aristocrats because the droids have basically built this utopia for them. But there's this plot where there are like droid uprisings, and so I was just like, oh, they're actually going to dig into like droid rights and everything. And then it turns out that no, there was just like a separatist holdout who was hacking droids to cause them to be violent. And all the droids are like, we love the humans for making us. We would do anything for them. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the most immoral thing Disney has ever done. And I'm counting when they drove a bunch of lemmings off a cliff. So,
oh man, that's crazy.
The way that droid rights have been treated in Star Wars is really hit or miss. It really depends on who's doing the writing and directing. There was another thing that you said where it felt like it wasn't like what it had to do with Star Wars is like there's droids, but it felt like it's its own thing. I kind of get the vibe that Tony Gilroy had an idea for this story before Star Wars was even involved. And then when he was brought on for rewrites and reshoots on Rogue One, they were like, oh, well, you did a good job on Rogue One. You want to do a show? And he's like, oh, boy, would I love to do a show.
Nice.
Yeah. I feel like Andor is the most Star Wars and also the least Star Wars at the same time in different directions. It is everything that I am interested in Star Wars, and all of the most interesting questions about the Star Wars universe are at play. It also utilizes like the aesthetic of the Star Wars universe very well. And yet it has none of the hallmarks of like most of the Star Wars media. There's like, I mean, especially in these 3 episodes, there's I don't even think a single mention of the Force. There's no mention of the Jedi. There's no lightsabers. There's no backflipping. There's no pushing things with your mind. It is very grounded in the political messaging, the spirit of like the story of Star Wars, which is something that I really like. And I think it's like, in that way, I think it does a great honor to, a lot of Lucas's thoughts in Star Wars. There's been endless discourse around Lucas and Star Wars, but the guy is very political. He had a very, very specific political message that he was writing into the original Star Wars movies, and then of course in the prequels. And this very much carries forward that spirit and says, let's take this one step further. Let's dive in fully into those political themes at play, and let's display it. And I love it. I love it. It makes for such a satisfying and rich story. I wanted to say, like, perhaps my favorite thing about this entire show is the lived in feel that every environment that you visit, there is like a ton of detail that is paid attention to, but it all interconnects with one another. One of the things I wanted to bring up is that I was like thinking about a ton on this watch through of it is the scene in, I believe it's in episode 3, where the Morlana pre-Lox Morlana like cops arrive on the scene, and then the people start banging the metal.
Yes.
It's like ding 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 ding, and like that whole episode is so perfect. But there's this, they arrive, the metal banging happens, and we as an audience don't yet know what purpose that serves. And we see from like the perspective of these corporate security cops who are coming in, who already are clearly, they're like, you know, they've mentioned the union boss in episode 1 mentions that they haven't been over to Ferrex in forever. They haven't needed to, that it's like it runs smoothly. And then when they get there, there's like some people in the town who whisper, they're like, hey, we haven't seen blues around in forever, referring to the uniforms of the cops. And then this dinging happens, and the cop, there's like I always forget his name, Cyril's little
Cyril Karn.
You know, Cyril's lackey. What's the lackey's name?
It's
Lucas
Sergeant something. I can't remember his
yeah.
name, but he's a sergeant.
Yeah, but that guy, he's like, somebody goes like, what's with the banging? And he's like, it's an intimidation tactic. And it becomes immediately apparent that it is the dead opposite of an intimidation tactic.
Well, that guy got things backwards multiple times, because like once their gunship gets blown up, because Brasso, the MVP of this whole arc, hooked up like a big heavy thing to it to cause its takeoff to like fuck up and crash. He goes, "We're under siege," and I'm like, "Bro, you're in someone else's house. This isn't you being under siege. You're running into Kevin McAllister."
Yeah.
True.
And it's really interesting to me, like how well everything interlocks, that you see Ferrex depicted as a place that is a thriving community of people who are working together, and they have their own problems and they sort them out. And then there's this arrogant choking force that comes in and is like, here's how we're going to do things. And they can literally, it plugs into the line that you open this with, the line about like, they're so arrogant they can't even imagine that you'd be in their house or whatever like that. It's the same idea. They can only see the world in terms of the way they do things. We're going to bring 12 guys in to arrest one guy. We're going to bring in 3 drop ships and into this place that we haven't even been around, that we don't even pay attention to. And then they're like, oh yeah, the banging of the pots and pans is like an intimidation tactic, when it's the actual opposite. It's literally, hey everybody, shit's going down, get to safety as fast as possible. And Marva has a line where she says, it's when the banging, or it's when the sound stops, that you should be worried.
I have it written down. It gets to you, doesn't it? That's what a reckoning sounds like. You want it to stop, but it just keeps coming. It's when it stops, that's when you'll really want to start to fret.
Yeah, and the idea behind that being, of course, that when it stops, everyone is inside except for the people who want to fight with the cops. The only people who, like, there's so much storytelling put into like that builds this town out and how it functions, that there's this strong, they are looking out for one another. They don't want innocents to be hurt. They know that the cops are not fair to them. And they have this system in place that allows them to shut their doors, get to safety, take cover, etc. And that the only people who are going to be out there, who remain out there, are people who are ready to go down and throw down with the cops. I love that. It's so characteristic of this show.
I have another observation here that I can actually tie this into current events, because I was just thinking about how Luigi Mangione was caught, where there was, a reward for information leading to his capture, except that due to technicalities, well, they didn't have to pay out the reward because the person who reported Luigi's whereabouts was not, in New York, and so called local PD. And well, local PD, they didn't put that out and everything. And that person also, the McDonald's worker, she also lost her job for doing that. So she got nothing for it. And then you have Tim, who, by the way, there was no reward for information on Cassian.
There wasn't even any reason except he doesn't like that he's talking to his girlfriend. Wow.
It was his insecurity because he viewed Cassian as a threat to Bix, which Cassian wasn't. Cassian and Bix, they seem to have had a relationship in the past at some point. And I don't know that they ever actually fully explain that, but they have a history. Been around. They have a history. Everyone in Ferrix has a history. It's a close-knit community. Mm-hmm. And Tim sells Cassian out for nothing and gets fucking shot for it.
Yep.
So don't fucking snitch.
It's not worth it because they're not looking out for you. These cops are not. They're literally not looking out for you. They're like it's wild. Like how much it nails that point home. Oh my God. And you touched on something that was another one of my big notes, which was this how well these first 3 episodes illustrate the chain link fence of the Empire, of how these things operate. A vaguely insecure kind of possessive guy sees an opportunity to flex his power over somebody. He does that by invoking the corporate security, which has to pay, homage, tribute, whatever you want to say, to the Empire. They are under the control of the Empire. They serve as a collaborator to the Empire, especially under Cyril. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, this union guy, or whatever he is, the union leader of the Preox or whatever he is, manager, who's kind of checked out, where he's like, this is an unfortunate accident or whatever. That guy knows oh man, the Empire being on our asses is not good for any of us. And he has a system by it. But Cyril's like, no, I believe in this. And so there's this handshake up the line that goes all the way up to imperial violence that creates this perpetual paranoia and people turning against one another, a pressure that exploits people's insecurities and fears in order to make them hurt one another in the name of consolidating imperial power.
It is really interesting, too, that they made the overt decision to make this a private military force.
Yes.
Yeah, because we've got this whole it's the government, it's the Empire. I just watched The Phantom Menace last night. So it's very distinctly political in that it is literally dealing with politicians, laws, tariffs, that kind of stuff. And this one takes the opportunity to more overtly state that, and you're even saying cops, DemonMama, it's indistinguishable. The behavior and the values and the corruption versus the lawful, neutral kind of guys who are I'm going to do my duty. But for it to explicitly be a private, it's a company. This is a company town, or at least the one where the events at the very beginning happened is a company town. But it's owned and governed by a corporation that is beholden to the Empire and basically serves the purpose of what we would understand as the purpose of policing today, agents of the state whose job is primarily to protect capital. So this is just taking that abstraction away and giving us security guards, private security guards, but they're basically doing what cops do because they're imbued with the same type of authority despite not having the governing agreement that we kind of tacitly understand to be present when we're dealing with official law enforcement or what have you. Mm-hmm. But I love that guy, the little weird guy who's I'm gonna give a lame speech and try really hard to catch this guy and disobey my superior. He reminds me of the little cleaning robot from WALL-E, the little angry guy who's he's running around cleaning stuff. I don't know why. The patheticness of that dude just reminds me of a tiny little robot.
Yeah, Cyril is. I love I love the role that he plays in this whole story, and I'm very excited. I'm not going to spoil a single thing.
Yeah, once we get in there,
it's super amazing. And in these first episodes, he is he is the one who buys in to the ideology of the Empire from top to bottom. He sees...
He's a true believer.
Yeah, he's a true believer. He sees his role as, oh yeah, I am imbued with this power of justice. This is my role. We corporations, we are truly, you know, the system works. The Empire distributes the power to us, and we carry out the power to the subjects, and everything runs as planned in his mind, despite the fact that what actually runs as planned is Ferrix has no cops. Ferrix has not needed cops to visit there in who knows how long. They say like it's been forever. It runs itself. The people have their own way of doing things. They have their own way of life. They're doing their jobs. They're dropping their scrap into the buckets that are required of them, and then they move on with their lives. And they all have their roles that they fill within that community. And it's like, no, this guy buys into this idea that no, this is only possible because of the Empire, because of the Empire's grace that is like shining down. It's so telling when he gives the speech and everyone else is just like yawning and rolling their eyes, that like so many of these people are just like, nah, this is just my job that I have to do because I'm here.
It's also a moral thing too, though. Like I can anticipate, I can imagine the kind of character arc that he might go through, because I think part of the conflict that he is feeling at the very beginning when he's first like, I'm going to go solve the crime. And the guy from the Vale in Game of Thrones is like, harumph, no, don't do it. But it's because he has a value on human life that his superiors don't. Like that is kind of underlying his motivations. It's not just the system. It's that those were employees. Those were hardworking employees of this company. And he's got his little sergeant lackey who agrees with him. Like it would be dereliction of duty if we didn't try to avenge or bring justice. And like, so it's that idealized disillusionment kind of thing where you're like, I became a cop to help people. And then it turns out that what we do is we cover things up and we don't actually solve crimes. And now I'm having a moral quandary between like what I think is right to do versus like how the system is working as intended to kind of just sweep crime under the rug and tell these elaborate stories. And I also think I'm really interested to see how this continues forward, because it happened a lot in the first episode, but I haven't seen a lot of it since then. But I'm curious if there's going to be this like overarching theme of who gets to tell the truth, because pop, one right after the other. In the first episode, we have the two security guards, and the one says, we'll go in, we'll tell him what happened. It was an accident. And then
he's obviously lying, but he's begging for his life because he knows he's going to die.
Oh, for sure. And then there's immediately the next scene. Cassian goes to his friend and is like, so you and we drank ourselves to sleep last night, didn't we? And the guy's like, actually, not only did we drink ourselves to sleep, but we had a fight a little bit.
And then that's why I punched you in the face, and that's why you had that bruise.
He's like, and he creates a lie within the lie of like, and I was helping you into your seat. And then there's another one immediately after that. Oh yeah, it's the cop being like, oh, we're just gonna say that it was an accident or whatever. So that's 3 times right in a row of like, who gets to tell the narrative? Like, what does truth mean when you're in these remote systems? Like, which I assume that this planet is kind of in the outer rim because it's like away from the centralized forces of the Empire, which is why they're using private security. But yeah, like, how do you know what's truth if shit is happening way out on the rims and there's no records, or you can fudge the records? So that's like a really interesting theme that I hope comes back around at some point, because it's just like, for it to happen that many times in the first episode, it makes me really feel like that is going to be significant somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think. I mean, I think it is. It's very important to the first arc too, which is just like, there's so much attention brought to like the boss and the way he says like, here's how we're gonna report the story, and Cyril's like. It's interesting because you said, he has like, he puts like a value on human life. Well, he puts a value on human life with a very strong ideological slant. And I think it's interesting how that's like highlighted, that he is not able to see what he's willing to look aside from in his arrogant position of saying like, I am the arbiter of justice. I am the one who will get to decide the truth. And my way of doing it is going to be a violent way of imposing.
Well, and how many people did they kill?
I know, all this crazy shit happens. He looks so harrowed at the end of the 3rd episode. He's like, he's shell-shocked. And it's like, dude, if you had just let this go, none of this would have happened. Like, all these boys wouldn't have died.
Yeah, the 2 security guards at the beginning of the show, they were dead. That was the catalyst for everything. but how many, like, I think he lost most of his troop. Because like the guy in the dropship died. There was like at least 3 dudes who got blown up when the car bomb went off. There was there was a couple dudes who died in the shootout in the warehouse.
Yeah.
That warehouse scene was a little weird. I didn't understand how the chains and everything they were suspending, how that was all working. It seemed like there was like energy being added somewhere. They didn't seem to be behaving in a way that made sense with physics, but you know, it is a Star Wars, so
it is. Yeah.
That was the most Star Warsy like weird bit of that episode, I think. But
yeah, for sure. I think by the end, I think the count that we had was that 6 of the 14 were dead by the end.
That's brutal.
But it was worth it, Cyril.
They get absolutely nothing from it. And it's like, you know, in that way, like his refusal to acknowledge, I think there's a part where the boss says like they were in a brothel, which we're not supposed to have, on duty.
The expensive one.
At the expensive one, which they're not supposed to be able to afford, on duty, which should get them fired immediately. And they were drinking an illegal form of alcohol, which we're not supposed to have. Like, this is like, this is one where you should just call it even. You should say, these guys were breaking all these rules. Why are we going to arbitrarily freak out on the fact that these 2 assholes got killed?
And also, I personally know that one of them was a shithead. Yeah, exactly. He was like, this is one of the worst people you could know.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm surprised he wasn't killed years ago.
I don't care about this guy.
It's like, so it's that like in these incomplete events, I think that what you're like the thing that you were pointing to and talking about was, you know, this idea of truth. And I think it's also like, how does truth over events that don't involve an authority, how does the authority like process and encode those events? And also like all the lies that they had to do afterwards are like a result of the fact that like this authority is going to try and impose like a necessary truth that has a violence at the end. There is a line that Luthen, the mysterious buyer character,
Skarsgård guy.
Skarsgård. I love him so much. And there's a line he says where he's like, oh, I guess I'm going to be in big trouble. Like they're probably going to execute me maybe at the end of Rick's Road. Didn't that happen to your father? And you go, oh, wow. So like the last like major police event that we even get to hear about in here was a public execution of someone that's very close to 2 of the characters that we know. And it's like, we know where the road ends. The road always ends with violence for this faction of violence. And I really like how this show just like hammers that home in a way that is like, illustrates it very clearly. It doesn't just like tell you that, it shows you how this mechanism of violence unfolds and where it ends and what it forces people to do. On that same line, there's another little detail of Cyril opens fire. He goes into like a little room and there's like these 2 little like, they're like Jawas or something. They're like, and then he goes,
they're weird little Star Wars guys.
Yeah.
That's what Star Wars is really about. Weird little guys.
The little dudes. And in this series, big guys. There's like 3 really big aliens. But anyway, he just like shoots at some random like children or tiny aliens that are just running by, and like that's his first instinct is just open fire. It's like this is how this system operates. It is violence at every end, and that necessitates every other person to contort themselves in these crazy ways.
Mm-hmm. Like this guy seems like a book pusher. Like he's like a pencil pusher. It seems to me like this is his first time in the line of duty practically.
Well, he's an officer. He's probably like the sergeant guy is really good at giving a motivating speech to the troops. And then here he comes and he's just like, the risk of doing nothing becomes the greatest risk of all. And he's very much like, you know, when you watch like war movies where you've got the lieutenant who's green behind the gills, who's never like actually seen a day of combat, suddenly thrust in, and all of the soldiers are like, oh, this guy fucking sucks.
Yeah. He should have just been like, I couldn't have said it better myself, Sarge. Let's go, boys. Like that should have been, he should have just let it go.
Yeah.
It demonstrates just how like far out, it really hammers home the arrogance of the imperial position and the presumptiveness of like right. Like, we have the right to rule over you, even though we know literally nothing about your city. We know nothing about, there's a line that I absolutely love. It's a really small line. They're like communicating. The cops are communicating over the little like comm line, and the sergeant lackey guy, he goes like, none of the roads have road signs. I don't know which roads are what. And it's just like, in this town, they don't need the road signs. Like, they know the road signs because they live there and they spend their time there and they talk about them and they know them based on landmarks. And it's like, these people come in and they literally don't even know the place that they're in. They can't navigate. They're wandering around because they can't navigate this place. And yet they presume to rule, to be able to issue death to its citizens.
It's literally like the cop that lives in the suburbs comes into the inner city to police the inner city. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you are not a part of this community in any capacity.
And yet you have a gun and you're going to shoot multiple people throughout this.
It also indicates that the Imperial oversight itself doesn't even map the city. Like, they could have like what is functionally Google Maps, where it's just like a sat nav, but they don't even have that. Like, the information that they're working with as the authority in that region is so limited. Not on the ground, there's no street signs, but they also don't have a map of any kind, which I guess is necessitated by the plot, but it gives us something to think about.
Well, and also like there could be an element of like, this is not a place that's easily
even worth mapping, maybe, or easy to map.
It's a map because it's changing all the time. I think one of the ones that was like, there's a part where, Cassian hides out in this ship, out in the junk sea. And there's just a ship that he knows how to get to that has these paths. Like, that probably changes all the time as new pieces of junk are put out there, as people walk out in different ways. Also, this is a side note. I didn't notice this until this watch through, but that ship that he stays on is the old ship that he was rescued on when he was a kid. And I didn't catch that, but you can actually, it's hard to tell, but there's when they go back, when you're in the flashback and they're like, we got to get this kid out of here. Like, the Imperials are going to be here and they will kill this kid, and then they go on their little ship to escape. And, what's Marva's husband, boyfriend?
I forget his name.
I forgot his name right now. He goes over and he pounds 3 times on the checker mark and a little door opens up. Same as when Andor pounds on the little checker mark and the door opens up where he's hiding the gun.
Okay.
And
like, it's derelict and he just still uses it as a safe house.
Yeah, it's like your old busted down RV that you go hide out at on the in the junkyard. It's crazy. I love that detail. But yeah, it kind of plays into the idea that like, this place is not easily mappable because it's changing all the time. It's a town that's doing its own thing, and you might not be able to.
Their primary economy is like scrapping old ships, right? Like, they've just got a whole big scrapyard. Like, Cassian makes most of his money by bribing like quartermasters to leave valuables on ships before they're sent for scrap,
so that they can scrap them out.
But there was something that you said, DemonMama, that I actually need to point out, because you were talking about the flashback where Marva rescues Cassa, later named Cassian. But you said, we got to rescue him from the Imperials, but it wasn't the Imperials. Back then, during that flashback, this was before the Empire. It was the Republic. It was a Republic ship that crashed and started killing the locals. So this wasn't even the Empire yet. It's
the neoliberals.
It's an important message, I think, that the horrors of Empire do not begin with fascism. That liberal democracies also commit these atrocities, but because they have a veneer of politeness about it, you don't think about it. But
blink and you'd miss it, because I didn't think about that. That it's been 20 years, and in that time, all of the events of the prequels would have happened.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's actually, there's so many details in the Cassa flashbacks that are that I love. Like, so there's this part where they're walking to go investigate the fallen Republic ship, and Cassa goes and wanders off the path, and he looks into this huge mining quarry.
That was awesome.
And there's a bunch of it looks amazing, and then also, but it's like they're all these blown up huge digger machines. And then later you hear in the normal, in the future timeline, whatever, in the present, you hear somebody mentions oh yeah, there was some kind of an Imperial mining disaster there. And then you can put two and two together and go, okay, so there's this like town of children that are all wearing like recycled work clothes and metal,
orange
like weird
jumpsuit
cans,
on that one
orange
kid.
jumpsuit. Yeah. And there's the mining disaster has clearly happened. It's like their parents, this is like a indigenous people whose parents had to go work in this mine. And then the mining disaster happened, and the Republic at that point was just like, we're out. So there's just these like literal children left to fend for themselves, these people whose families were killed, and there's just no one there to take care of them. They're literally living in like a town that they've put together from the trash that they could scrap and trying to survive themselves.
The implication from Marva that all those kids are dead now. When once the Republic comes to like recover their ship and they find that one dude stuck like a pincushion with all of those darts, they're gonna go after the locals.
Yeah. You know what's really interesting is now that we're having this discussion. So first of all, when that scene happens, when he's just looking at the big mining whatever, the music and the way that it's shot gives you the sensation of like, oh, a lot of people are dead now. And like something happened here. Like there's just this kind of void feeling of like something really, really seriously bad happened here. But then, I would have missed this except that for this conversation, but pointing out that his dad was executed, that was not an accident. That was not a mining accident. The official story is that it was an accident. That mining facility was destroyed by the indigenous population.
No. Sorry. I meant the person who was executed is his adoptive father.
The guy that was with Marva.
It was the
guy we'll find out more about that later. But that is who they're talking about.
Because I was like, what about their parents and stuff? Because they're just alone there. But there is a possibility that could be part of what you're supposed to pick up. That like maybe it wasn't an accident, just because we're already talking about these themes of like who told the official story. But regardless, a lot of people are dead, and now there's a bunch of children just orphaned.
And also, you have to consider that like the whole thing starts because Cassian's looking for a sister who he hasn't seen since she was a little girl on Kenari. And like, given what we've seen, what Marva suggested, like it's almost assured that his sister is dead. His sister probably died days after he was gone. And
she wasn't big enough to protect herself.
But there's no way for him to know. He will never know. And you can understand why he would go after anything. He catches wind that there's a Kenari girl working a brothel. He's gonna fucking check that out. He wants to know what's going on.
This show, and especially these first 3 episodes, does such a phenomenal job of setting the emotional tone of a universe that has, on like the broadest level, on the level of the government and the state, which, obviously, this show exists in the cultural context, that we do. It is our news and our media is always obsessed with talking about the broadest scale, the federal government, the state government, all these ruling entities in these states and whatever. And what we see is that at every turn, these structures are completely inhuman. They are completely incapable of understanding and processing and interacting with real human things. So a guy who's missing his sister and is looking for his sister becomes a chain of state empowered authority using their ability to just hurt him further. There's no recourse for him to just like find his sister, which is a super understandable human thing, where we see like humans caring for one another and we see this ability of people to be humans is in Ferrix, in this town where people are bending the rules at every corner. There are like, there's almost a complete disregard for every rule you can imagine. People covering for each other in all kinds of different ways. They have these systems of code where they can go do things they're not supposed to do, like, send off planet transmissions to people.
That was legit. I enjoyed that because she was like, oh yeah, I need to find something. And it's like, oh yeah, it's way back there, girl. You got, good luck with it. And like, it's clearly a system that they have worked out.
Yeah. I asked for this thing. You send me back to the yellow rack. I go through the yellow rack and there's like a thing I can use to go make an off-planet call to somebody. And yeah, it's all these people who are really looking out. Another one that's like an easy to miss detail because it's not really put in a bunch, but it's like that Brasso and probably multiple other people are all like working to take care of Marva. Like Marva's old, she struggles to get around. We see at multiple points that she has a hard time moving.
And Cassian's not always around because Cassian he's a criminal. Like, he does what he needs to do to get by, but that often means he doesn't come home. And Brasso yells at him for, he's like, and tell Marva she can afford to keep the heat on in there. She's old. She needs some warmth in there.
It needs to be warm. Yeah. And it's like, there's all these people, watching out for one another. You have Salman, I think his name is, the guy who like runs the scrap shop, and he's the one who like lets Bix use the phone. And then you have what's the guy's name? I want to say like Nori or something, but the guy who's like letting Andor fly the scrap ships. Yeah, under his boss's nose. He's like, just bring it back and whatever. Like that guy is like all these people like doing things to help each other just survive in little tiny ways. It's like, this is a tough existence, and we're all the only people who have any sort of moment of going like, oh yeah, like this is what we have to do, and these people need this. And there's just time after time you see that in that town. And the standout example, of course, is Tim, who kind of like swims the other way because of his insecurity.
And he definitely got out of that one. Okay, that worked for him.
It was a great system for him. You know what's really funny though, given that this is such a tight knit community and all, and this is like a quick line, blink and you miss it moment, but Andor has sex with married women. He does. Bix is like, what's going on? You got another angry, jealous husband, and it's like you get the impression that, and like also Marva says like, oh, it's all your women I'm worried about. It's like not only is he like sleeping around, but they're like Bix implies heavily or directly says basically that he has sex with married women. So it's like he's just like he's a rough character. He's a scoundrel. Yeah, he owes everybody money. He's not paying everybody back. He's taking ships to places and like changing out the chip so that the ship isn't identifiable as the one that he flew. Like, he's
doing a lot of stuff. And yet at the end of the day, like, he owes some people money or whatever, but he also has, you could tell that he has like a lot of friends in the town, even if some of them are fucking annoyed at him.
When that one guy comes to collect and hires that big guy as muscle and Cassie's like, dude, what are you doing working for him? He's like, he just told me I had to stand here. He's like, come on, man, you're better than this. It's just like he's like they're obviously friends. He's like, come on, man, like I'll get you a drink later or something like that.
Like, really, you think that I think that you're gonna kick my ass? Like, you have failed the intimidation check.
Yeah.
I love that part so much. It's great too how this show makes you feel bad for Tim at the end. Like, it's like on one hand, it's like, man, this guy is like, he's so possessive and he's such a shithead. But then you're just like, he fucking didn't deserve to get blasted though.
Yeah, and he was literally trying to protect Bix because Bix was being brutalized by them for no reason other than she was running.
It's just the show is so uncompromising in its willingness to depict like, this is how violence unfolds. This is what these things do. When you call people to your town to hurt somebody, they're going to hurt people. And it might not be the people you want them to hurt.
Yeah, you can't control it. You bring in the cops and who knows what's going to happen. Even if it was a welfare check, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I find this show just like, I don't know. It's the contrast between like the consistently, I mean, it sells the oppression so well, and it doesn't do it in a cartoony way like at all. Like you know, that's the thing with a lot of Star Wars. You get a lot of like Darth Vader's a guy who looks like the devil, and he's like, I am here to choke you to death. And it's like, no, these are like dudes in like scuffed ass uniforms who are like, I'm getting paid to beat your head in because the corporate lord, like, it's a very grounded type, but it sells this just choking oppression. There's a line that I love this. There's two parts that I noted down. So the first, these are both Luthen scenes. The first one is he's riding on like an Airbus thing, to like go from his like literal parking spot in the mountains to like come in, and he talks to this old man, and the old man's just like, yeah, they get you coming both ways, don't they? They make you pay twice how much they make you pay to park out there. Oh, damn. And like, he's just like, he's talking about how like, oh, like you have to sit here on these like horrible buses. And like, he's like, and back in the day, it wasn't much better either. Like they got you then too. Like, it's like these, you know, power structures that claim to serve you are really just like forcing you to do great like inconveniences for money. And so you have that. And then you have him have that whole conversation, this conversation about how like every aspect of life is filtered through these like imperial machines. And then you finally, at the end of the third episode, Luthen puts a specific name to these things. He's like, don't you feel it? The way they tell you to go, the way they tell you to stop, the way they make you do all these different things. You can feel you could feel that people can't take it anymore, that they can't handle this constant, no matter what you do, you've got somebody else making the decision for you. They're wrenching your arms around. Like, I don't remember the exact line, but it's like this great line where he finally puts a name to what we've been seeing this whole time. And it's just such a satisfying moment. I love it.
And of course ends it with, don't you want to fight these bastards for real?
Yes, yes. Don't you want to fight these bastards for real?
Which he says with such conviction as he's got a gun pointed at his forehead. Like he's no fear. He's just like, come on, you know who you want to kill, and it's not me. Don't you want to do some real damage? There was another line that that old guy on the bus said to Stellan Skarsgård's character. I forgot his name already.
Luthen Rail.
Yeah, Luthen. Yeah, there was a line that he said is like, if you can't find it here, it's not worth finding, which I thought is like interesting in a number of ways, because like it then goes to like looking at like a big aerial shot of the town, and it's like kind of two minds of it, where like you're in the ass end of the universe. If you can't find it here, it's not worth the time to find. This is where all the shit comes. This is the last scrap heap before you're basically on Jakku. And so there's that, but there's also like a tinge of affection for the place. It's scrappy and it's it's the ass end of the universe, but like this place means something. This is worth something.
Was that guy supposed to be as creepy as he was? Because I found him very creepy.
Oh,
maybe he was just a chatty old man.
Yeah, I think it's a chatty old guy. But
I guess I've had some chatty old men be weird to me before, so maybe there's just
I get that completely. No, but I think you're really onto something with that. Like there's another part of it where it's like, you know, Ferrix is like, you look at it and it's like, man, there's like junk everywhere. There's busted down cars and there's all this stuff. And yet like every place, every interior that you're in is like the coziest place that you've ever seen. Like it's got this warmth and charm and community to it. That's even like, you're like, oh man, this place is like, literally it's like surrounded by a giant junkyard. Yeah.
There's something homey about brick built buildings that just feel more tangible, more real,
especially in this case.
Well, when you consider that so much of Star Wars, like basically ever since George Lucas figured out he didn't have to build sets anymore, that like Star Wars really kind of started the whole trend of just doing virtual sets. And like Mandalorian did the video wall, the volume thing, so that people are just like okay, yeah, we just like, it's basically rear projection but fancier with LCD screens. But they built everything here. They didn't use the video wall. They didn't use, I mean, obviously it's Star Wars, you're always going to have green screen for something. They're doing space shots, you know what? But like Ferrix, they built that whole fucking town.
That's cool.
Yeah, like
it really makes things so much more
all
grounded.
of Rick's Road, and like all the buildings are like fully furnished. Like I was reading an interview where somebody's like, yeah, I was just on the set and I just like was in one of the buildings and I opened up just a random drawer and there was stuff in the drawer. They were just like, no, we're making this whole thing feel alive, and it does. It feels like a place. It
does,
because it
tells it. Yeah. There's so many like little important details that show like the guy who plays the bell.
He's so into his job. He's like, this is a ritual. It's like it's like religious to him. It's so weird.
It's like, well, this is a function. I announce the start and the end of the workday. This guy is he's the heartbeat of one large portion of this town, and people like set their days to this guy's playing, this one guy. And it's like, it's cool too, because I mean, I think it touches on some themes of like, this place keeps its own time. You know what I mean? It's not really explicitly stated, but the idea that you have a guy who goes and plays the bells at a certain time of day and that starts the workday, there's an implication that this place doesn't run on the same clock as the rest of the world. It runs on its own little clock, and that clock works for them, and it makes things function the way that they want it to. I love all these details so much, and yeah,
Definitely
beautiful.
enjoyable.
The hook at the end is fantastic, where it's like, you know, Luthen's like, you know, I'll forget the box. Like, I got what I really came here for, which is somebody who can get me boxes.
Well, okay, but yeah, there's that. But Cassian was definitely trying to get that box, because Cassian, he doesn't want to like go sign up for the rebellion. He's just trying to survive.
He just needs the money.
That box is 40,000 credits, and he's on the run from the law with nothing to his name. He needs that money, not only so that he can send some of it to make sure Marv is taken care of, but so that when he's on the run, he can actually like hire a transport or get like new papers, a new identity, you know, like he's wanted for murders that he committed. So, you know, he's desperate. And so he's willing to risk his life to get the box that they're not going to get.
And we know that he already left money for Marva. Like that, one of the things he says to B is like, "Here's where I hid the money. Like, wait until everything cools down and then go get it." It's it's so good.
It's such a human story, I will say. Like, and like, I guess to be fair, you know, all the Star Warses feature human primary characters and like a couple droids. We really don't get much of like aliens being centered in our stories, but this one, it really just feels like grounded human problems that are not, it's not like, oh my God, I'm trying to emotionally invest in this like senator lady who like cares about her planet. You know, it's like that. It's kind of like what we talked about with Wakanda, and like the fact that that story in Black Panther focused on the aristocracy, like it's like two king figures trying to decide who gets to actually be king. That is not a very relatable story. It does not acknowledge that there are real people in that country who probably have opinions about what their leadership is doing. Yeah, and then this story by comparison is just so down to earth, so grounded. It's all about those interpersonal relationships and, you know, are we supporting each other? Are we covering for each other? Are we helping make ends meet? Are we screwing each other over? Like, it's just much more personally relatable. Whether or not you can see yourself in any of those characters, you can still probably relate to at least one aspect of that struggle being represented. And that's what makes this so much better for me than most Star Wars.
I'm so happy you brought that up, Moss, because there's going to be, I will not say any details, but there's going to be something very relevant to that point in the near future of this show that is going to, you're going to go,
there was a specific line that you said that I don't want to tell you which one it was, but you said it and I'm just like, oh, well, like, okay, next episode.
Somebody who knows things is going to be like,
watch.
aha.
Yeah, but it's
that
like,
tells me that I'm good at literature.
You're on point. Like, you're in the right direction. And this show is going to be like, here you go. Here's some treats for you in that regard. Because, it's I'm very excited to watch the next little arc here.
The next arc, Did we have any final thoughts, anyone, before we sign off here?
I just love all the characters in the show so much. I love Marva. I love B. I love Brasso. Bix,
Brasso's the MVP.
And Brasso he's such a bro. And like, and you just go like, man, this guy he's so cool. He's so grounded and kind. And like, it's this show just, oh my God, I love it. I'm just so in love with the world that it's created in. And I was truly floored the first time I watched this that I felt so much about a Star Wars property that I was just like, what is happening? What is going on? And it's because there's heart here. There's something real. There's something truly trying to be said. And I'm very excited for us to be able to, as we get towards the end, talk about the full themes as they all come together, because the show certainly does a very good job at tying everything that it sets up together into one really wonderful bow.
Of course, then, once we get to season 2, I'm sure Jar Jar Binks will talk about how we have to, vote for Space Hillary. But
I am scared, but the thing is, I've since the first season happened, I was already like, even if everything else sucks, the fact that we got this season and the way that it like is written to like be a self-contained story with very few like loose ends, it makes me go like, I'm okay. Even if it sucks, it won't be the end of the world. I'll be sad, but
season 1 still exists.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think that about does it. We will resume next time with the next 3 episodes of Andor. And until then, I've been Gayfesh.
I'm Moss.
And I'm DemonMama.
And we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.